and good afternoon. My name is Aline Delpierre, and I'm with Contact Engine. I am joined by Giles Bryan, who is a founder and CEO of Contact Engine, and Dana Scott, who is the Alliance Director with Accenture for Contact Engine. And during this session, we're going to be doing a deep dive into how corporations and startups work together to create success and some of the best practices and processes involved with doing that. We'll stop roughly 10 or 15 minutes before the end of the session to answer some of your questions. So please, as we move through the session, feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll get to the end of the session. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. The first question has two parts to it. So Giles, you'll answer the first part and second, and then I'll kick it over to Dana to finish answering the question. So the first question, this will be your favorite question. Can you talk about the history of Contact Engine and how you're partnering with Accenture?
I sure can. Thanks very much, Aline, for the introduction. Great to be here in Atlanta, and great to be back with Dana again. Always enjoy working with you, Dana. So Contact Engine, three of us founded it. We've been working together since 2004. So Post.com, we did some good work with charities and things, always looking for ways of improving customer experiences and communication. Since then, 2009, we founded a company called iPadio, stood for IP radio. It was called audio blogging, which was a testament to the fact you could do anything with technology, but turning it into a real business is a different thing. Had a pivot 2012, where we came from kind of audio blogging. We pivoted into customer communications, so communications between large corporations and their consumer base. First client was Virgin Media, and we were very pleased to be working with them in the UK. I should have said founded in London. Virgin Media, for those who don't know, is a cable company, cable TV company. It's also renowned as having great customer experience. So if we could do great customer experience for a cable company, that obviously was a good position to be in. Then we got various other telcos in the UK. I'm an Americanophile, so despite my English accent, I like all things American. And I moved over here in 2017 because I previously worked for a company called MicroStrategy in the 90s. I've always loved doing business in the US. And so I moved over with my family in 2017 to kick off our US operations. And so Contact Engine Inc. is now the Delaware Inc. Incorporated part of Contact Engine. And over here, I've been extraordinarily pleased to be working with Accenture. We did some initial work with Accenture back with Virgin Media, but over here, it's really flourished. So clients include Verizon, TELUS, and other of Accenture's clients as well. So, and also we're now breaking into the state and public sector here in the US. So that's a bit of the history of us. Okay,
perfect. And how are you partnering with Accenture today?
Accenture are our number one partner. On the underneath my PC, there's a big sticker. It's a blue Accenture sticker that says bold and courageous. So Dana and I have been working together since like 2018, 2017, and essentially Accenture, they are go-to-market. Not only our go-to-market, because they already work with all the clients we want to work with. Literally, absolutely all of them, globally, not just in North America. And they're also our delivery partner. So we want to build software. Accenture wants to take great solutions to their clients and really implement, manage service, knowledge engineers of those. So effectively, our job is to provide great software, and Accenture and Dana's job is to make sure their clients get awesome solutions and services. People buy the great Accenture stuff.
Perfect. Well, let's start with Dana on this question. Can you describe how corporations and startups best work together to innovate to scale?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that has worked so well for us at Accenture in partnering with Contact Engine, and I think this would go for any startup for that matter, is having a unique view or a unique visibility into the basic business problem, right? And then being able to take a startup who can solve that specific business problem and bring them to market to essentially meet that, let's say, that one requirement. Well, once you're in the door and you meet that one requirement, surrounding them with others who also understand other problems in a particular corporation and looking at how that technology could then be flexed and expanded to solve other business problems is how you take something from a one use case scenario to a multiple use case, multiple tower, multiple organization across the enterprise. With Contact Engine, I can say over the last 2.5 years, I've really loved the opportunity to what I call land and expand with them. So solving the initial business problem and then taking them other places. And now we're looking at new industries, new clients, new logos for them. These are our current clients. So we're not necessarily breaking into new clients just yet. But it's great being able to take something that we're getting great results from for one client base to another, and then also looking at partnering with them to actually build out their product even more to become even that much more relevant across all of the industries. It's a great partnership, and we look forward to what's next.
Perfect. Giles, I'm going to ask you the same question, but from a startup's perspective. How is it working with corporations to innovate to scale? Giles, I think you're on mute.
Apologies, that was in case my delightful children decided to run past at the same time. So I'm going to answer this question in two ways. The first is about actually working directly with corporations, which is obviously where we started. And the second is about working with partners, so Accenture in particular, because there are some differences. So in corporations, especially for a startup, getting those first use cases, it's really hard, I have to say. It's not something, it's not done by the faint-hearted, but basically you've got to find a gap. You've got to find a gap between their current provision and what you can provide. And you've got to find that gap. And it's quite often a gap that's between departments. It's a gap between departments and their perceptions of IT. And you've got to make sure you can deliver into that gap really fast, really effectively. One of the key things we found was in-year OpEx savings. Because if you find yourself as a startup, we're relatively small. We would have come up against Google and Salesforce and LivePerson, the whole RFP process. And their marketing machines would have just, irrespective of the capabilities, their marketing and sales machines, we couldn't compete against. So you've got to find something, a niche that you get into, and that they're able to prove what you can do. So that's how we broke into places like Virgin and Sky. We basically found those people, in-year OpEx savings. We found the use case. We delivered it fast. It wasn't a big rollout. Kind of 3 months to kind of return on investment, and that's that part. And at some stage, you have to engage with corporate IT and procurement and all that kind of stuff. And that for a small company, especially we're working with organizations like Verizon, these great corporates. That's very, very hard for us to do. And that's where you then switch your attention to, kind of big brother or big sister, whichever it might be. But in my case, meeting up with Dana and Accenture and these great systems integrators, these great organizations, they're always on the lookout for new technology and technology that may not be, hasn't got the sort of marketing and sales pizzazz that a lot of the mags have. But they're amazing at saying this actually is groundbreaking technology. And that's really where systems integrators, Accenture, they're curators of technology. They aren't just going to be fooled by all the marketing stuff. They want to see what's really happening on the ground. And that's where, if you can, and definitely was our aim to say, for me, it was always Accenture. I almost worked for Accenture when they were still called Anderson Consulting. I got through the third round interview at the accountancy firm, but before I worked out, I filled in the wrong form. Anyway, for me, it was always Accenture, the biggest SI in the world, the broadest spectrum of clients, the most active in North America. It was really about, in fairness, we had to make a lot of phone calls and before we found the right person, because it's a very complex organization. But once you find the right person, they go, yes. In this case, for us, it was Dana. Yes, I see how this works. I want to take you to some of my other clients, see if it works there. Then, hold on for the ride, because two things. you better make sure that you can deliver at scale. And you know, that was that was, you know, has been challenging. We've done it. It was perfect, but hold on, because everything changes. And you know, and secondly, make sure you're ready for the expansion, not only of technology, but also the expansion of sales, because it's a different world once you get to there. But that's what you need to do, I think, for any startup, is find a use case. You'll have to drive that yourself. Once you've got that use case, find the partners who can take that use case global.
Perfect.
That's me.
Perfect. And this great segue into champions. Let's go ahead and talk about the roles of champions. So, and I'll start with you, Dana. So a champion from the corporation and a champion from the startup, how do they work together to make this happen?
So if I think about how we partnered with Contact Engine, I would say that I am the champion from Accenture. I was the original, you know, person who that was connected with Giles and team to really just understand the solution, right? So that's really where it starts. You have to find someone who has the time and also the energy really to get a real good understanding of what is it that the startup has that they can bring to the table. And that person also has to have some type of a functional capability or a functional depth in the specific area that the startup addresses, right? That really, really helps. Because then what it turns into is, okay, let's talk about how we bring your solution to, let's say, these 3 customers, because I think that they may have this problem. But then you also need a champion, and I think Giles will speak to this a bit. You also need a champion that's also maybe looking 3 to 5 steps ahead of just addressing the original ask of, hey, can you help me get into client A? Or, hey, can you guys think of, you know, where our solution may be applicable? You need someone who's also going to kind of hold you accountable for growing your solution above and beyond where it is today, right? So not necessarily forcefully influencing your product roadmap, but really challenging you to ask some of those what if questions of, well, have you thought about maybe how you would address this? Or what are you guys thinking of that? Or, you know, have you done any research in this area? Because 9 times out of 10, these are things that they're hearing from their customers that they think that, you know, they don't, like me as a champion, and I'm going to say this, and it's probably not true. So Giles, you can call my bluff on this one. Most champions will try not to bully. I do. They'll try not to bully the startup to advance the agenda, but they will, you know, just drop little nuggets, right? You know, say, you know, are you doing more within the AI space? What are you doing? Like, I think my latest ask was, what are we doing to address voice AI? What's next, right? I'm always, you know, 5 or 6 steps ahead. What's next? You need champions who are going to push you and push the envelope, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's key, is to have a champion within a corporation that is going to put that pressure on you, that's thinking futuristically and going to make you guys scale with them. So my question for you, Giles, who is a perfect champion? What would you be looking for in that champion in a corporation?
Yeah, it's very interesting thinking about, actually, a champion. Often people think of it as being, you know, a very easy relationship, and actually a champion can be really challenging, really demanding, and certainly, you know, Dana is one point. Being hypercritical, being super demanding, that's what actually drives success. And it's, if you think about it at the initial level, when you first get some work with a corporate, the corporate that you choose and the person that you choose is hugely important, because you're going to expend an enormous amount of effort getting those first clients. And if those first clients aren't people who, when you put them on your website, when you talk about them, make a difference to you as an organization, if it's not people that other people, you know, organizations that other organizations respect, then you could be heading the wrong direction. You could actually be doing things that damage your brand and damage your technology. And likewise, if the champion isn't someone that constantly says, it's not good enough, I want more, I want faster, I want bigger, I want more AI, I want more automation, then that's also a problem. So your ideal champion is someone who's willing to challenge the established norms. That's absolutely vital. They are willing to challenge their own organization. They're willing to break processes, break procedures. You need someone who is, I've got a lot of background noise. Has everyone got that? It's just me. Just me. So they've got to be people who are, they're willing to go against procedures. They're willing to take your technology and put it into an organization. But they also need to be someone, this happened particularly when we get to the partner stage with Dana and Accenture, someone who really is willing to take the time and effort to understand how to deploy something unique, but that also means shaping it, merging it, massaging it into the right shape. And that does take an enormous amount of effort. And you have to really be quite visionary to do that. So, especially in the partners where it's so easy for Accenture just to say, we'll use Amazon or we'll use Salesforce or Google, to say, actually, no, I'm not willing to accept it's good enough. I'm not willing to accept it's on the roadmap. I want this functionality. I want it now because it delivers good value. So, choosing the right people to work with is right companies, the right people is the most demanding choices you'll make. It's even more important than actually choosing your own staff. It's the most important thing, because otherwise you won't progress.
Okay, great. Now, the next question I'll have both of you answer. So we're fast forwarding to, you are in a partnership, it's working great, champions are identified, you're going after a business jointly. How do you make the transition to production once let's say your customer wants to do a pilot or a proof of concept? What does that transition look like once you're in the door and they've agreed to that? And we'll let Dana answer first.
So I would say that one of the first steps to getting from pilot to production, if you will, in scaling, is you have to have the results, right? You have to have the results. So that means that you have to be willing to bring, that A game, and do a bit more sometimes during what most people would consider as like a simple proof of concept or a simple pilot, to really showcase what you're really going to be capable of on the back end, right? So sometimes that does require, and I think this will be particularly challenging in a startup environment, being willing to do certain things with investments, right? So, because I know, and Giles and I had this discussion when we wanted to do a pilot for a prestigious customer. I'm like, you have to be willing to invest because they don't want to pay. He's like, I can't do that. I'm like, we'll figure it out, but you have to be willing to invest because we're investing. We're going to invest together. Let's do this. You have to be willing to stick your neck out a little bit, but you have to also bring that A team to the table that's going to deliver on that proof of concept or that pilot so that the results are unquestionable and getting to the next stage is easy, or easier, if you will.
Okay. Giles?
Yeah, I agree with that. So the first thing is the business case. One of the problems that startups have, and we were guilty of it ourselves in the early days, is you get very excited about your technology and what the technology can do. And you say, we've got this really cool tech, you should use it. And people are like, why? So you have to ruthlessly focus on the business case. It's funny, when we started initially working with Verizon, we had this very proven business case that we'd done for a couple of telcos in the UK, which was to do with reducing the number of repair trucks. And basically, you knock out 10% of people's repair trucks, it's straight to the bottom line savings. You make the CFO happy, you've got yourself a business case, everyone's interested, and everyone wants to do that. When we came over here, we started talking to Verizon initially. We had a situation where the use case that they wanted us to do, it was cool, but it wasn't going to make a whole load of money. So we said, it was interesting. We said, okay, we'll do that use case for you. And they were going to pay us some money for that. But also, we want the right to do this other use case that we believe in because we think that's the most important thing. So we actually it was quite a hard negotiation and bargain to do effectively to be able to say that. And they said, okay, you can do all the use case you want to do as long as you also do the use case we want you to do. The long and short of it is those things flipped. We ended up not doing the one that they wanted to do and focusing on the one we wanted to do because that was the one that saved a huge amount of money. So the business case is absolutely vital, and not getting distracted into stuff that's cool but the CFO's not happy, no good. You've got to make the CFOs happy. So that's the first thing about scaling. The other thing, if we're talking about technology companies, and I appreciate it's not all about technology companies, but there's certain things you need to make sure that you have done in order to scale, especially if you're talking about scaling in the US market, which all of a sudden, we went from doing, millions of customer journeys to all of a sudden tens of millions and hundreds of millions of customer journeys. The scale ups are exponential. So you've got to make sure you've got your architecture, your technology architecture right. You've got to make sure that you're using cloud properly, that you've containerized, that you've got the auto scale up part. And one of the key investments there, and it seems like an awfully expensive investment early on, is in DevOps. The DevOps function to any technology organization is absolutely vital. And DevOps people right now, especially with the massive growth in cloud, it's been like trying to find Cinderellas. They really are the belle of the ball. So you've got to work really hard to find these great DevOps people who are willing to, not take the huge bucks from Amazon and the likes, but actually say, I want to work with a startup, with a scale up, and I want to go on this journey with you. And they're just a hugely important part of the team that you need to invest in early on.
Perfect. Now we're going to go into, now that you have a joint customer together, how do you land and expand? I know, Dana, you mentioned this earlier in the session. How do you land and expand? What does that process look like? What are some of the best practices that you can share?
So I'm running an engagement right now where we are constantly focusing on that exact thing, landing and expanding into other areas. So first, I'd say make sure that the team that you have on the ground to deliver the first case or the first set of use cases that you're selling are the right team to really make sure that they are successful, right? Because no one's going to question you trying to bring the capability to other parts of the organization if you have a success to point back to, right? So that gets back to make sure you have the A team. You need to have an A team. An A team from the partner side, in this case being Accenture, and then an A team, obviously, from the startup side, in this case being Contact Engine. So that would be step one. Step two is you have to have someone that's a part of that team that has visibility to other needs in the business where the solution might be applicable. And they have the ability to kind of look around a little bit. And they have some level of either political capital to start discussions, or they know people who do, right? So that'll be key. Because then your expansion opportunities really show up at your door versus you having to knock on doors and do a bunch of cold calling. The other thing is if you're, jointly delivering for a client, understand who the client is inside that can evangelize on your behalf. Because if you're delivering, tremendous results for an organization and it's something that can really help them, they are going to want to look good in front of their peers. So they will tell your story. And if they do that, then your job becomes easy because then it's just connecting the dots.
Perfect. And Giles, from a startup perspective, in terms of landing and expanding, what are some best practices that you can give to the audience?
It's interesting, actually. You made me think about a couple of things there. The first is definitely the bit about the A team, and also the bit about the stories. I'll take the stories first. So we worked with one guy, Dale and I, recently. It was interesting. He said the numbers have got to be there. That's great. I want the numbers to be there. The numbers have to be there. And we used to produce a deck weekly for months during a pilot that had all these numbers in. And we found out this guy was effectively turning to page 8, which was to read some of the customer stories, the customer experience stories. He said, "That's all I want, because if the numbers aren't there, you're not here. We're not going to have anything. But when I'm describing this to my peers and to the rest of the organization, I need the stories about how you've changed the customer experience. Where are we going? What are we doing?" And those stories become hugely important about how you've used AI and how it's changed the customer experience. And we do hundreds of millions of customer journeys, but you end up talking about a few of them, and those few. So creating those stories is hugely important. The numbers have to be there, but the stories is one thing. And then on the champions side, one of the things that we've been working very hard with Dana and the team is essentially education and enablement. Aline, I know you've been involved in this as well, and thank you so much for all your work. Putting in place the training systems, the learning management systems, basically finding a way to suck all the information out of heads of people like mine and give it to everybody else, because there's no point me knowing how Contact Engine works or how to position it. It needs to be done entirely without Contact Engine's involvement. So the education, the enablement, and Dana will laugh, the documentation, the reporting, you've got to get all that stuff done. And it's not stuff that startups are typically good at because they're going so fast. How do you document it, right? But actually, you've got to sit back and say, we have to do this. Along with all the passion, we have to get some professionalism in there as well. And to make Land and Expand actually feasible and possible for our clients and for our partners, those things have to be put in place, along with the stories and all the passion that comes with that. You have to, basically sort everything out so that it's easily digestible. And Aline, thank you so much for everything you're doing to help us do that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great that you brought up enablement. So from Dana, from your perspective, you're the corporate, you're working with a startup. What kind of enablement, go-to-market things would you like to see from your startups?
I would say so, and I think Giles would have a good appreciation for this. I just want to see progress, right? I give Giles and team over the year plus that we've been working together, I've given them a really, really, really hard time about, okay, we don't have this, we don't have this, we need this, you need that, my people need this, your people need this. And it's been a lot of like a long, long, long list of demands. And I just kept hammering, and Giles has all the bruises to prove it. But then we fast forward to a year plus later, and then it's like, all right, Giles, let's really talk about where we are. You guys have addressed this. I have more people trained. You guys are getting there and you're doing the work. So as hard as I am on you, it's for no lack of me thinking that you aren't trying. It's because I have to get you guys ready for what's going to happen when this explodes. Because when you ask me as your partner to take you to market, I am going to take you to market, right? And you have to be ready for it. So if you ask for something and it's delivered, you have to be ready for it. So it is my job to ensure that you're ready. The flip of that also is, and putting myself, like, if you are the startup, what you have to understand is if you found a champion in a corporation, you have to also acknowledge the fact that corporations have options, right? Especially corporations like Accenture, we have options. So if we're going to constantly be pushing you, we want to make sure that you're ready. And then we want to be able to answer all the questions because we don't want to give anyone an opportunity to pivot to an alternative when we know that you have such great potential. And the other piece of it is knowing when, and I think, Giles, this is something that Contact Engine is getting much better at, knowing when to raise your hand and say, hey, we need help, right? We can't figure this piece out. So, I think I've been complaining about reporting for like 55 years. And Giles finally sent an email to our lead that sits over all of our BI and reporting. And he's like, so when can we start to engage to get some people to come look at our reporting? And I know you have to be ready for it. But when you have good partners, they'll help you along the way. And I do give some oxygen here and there because I get it. And I've worked with a lot of startups in my career. So I've seen all forms of fashions. I've worked in the basement. I've worked in a boardroom. I've built product from scratch for startups. So I've seen it all, right? I would say that Contact Engine, although they might think at times that they are nascent, no, not at all. I've seen everything, and they're actually in a great position. So I'm super excited to see what's next.
Perfect. One thing that's interesting about Contact Engine is we're able to scale across industries. One question for you, Dana, first, and then we'll get to Giles, is how do you gain credibility? So if you started in one vertical as a startup, bringing them into the corporation, how do you gain credibility to scale them to a different one?
So I would say that it's probably easier than you think. What I would think, so I'll give you a tangible example. If you're working in like telecommunications, so Giles has referenced Verizon a number of times. So if you're working in telecommunications, and then, I can publicly share this, at Verizon, they're managing installation and repair appointments for the field organization. if that's where you're starting, then, and you know, ultimately you want to get into banking, then the best option would be to figure out if you can get into collections or credit or billing, right? Because then it's a natural parallel. If I think about another client that we work at together, we have capabilities where we're providing customers with PIN numbers in order to approve transactions, right? And it's very secure. In a scenario like that, you could then translate that over into, in some instances, some state and local government work, right? So there are always parallels. You just have to know how to connect those dots. And I would also say it's probably going to be key to have people that are a part of the current engagements that are a bit of the dreamers. So like on my team, I would say I'm probably the dreamer of it all. I'm like, well, if we could do this, then could we do that, right? You need to have a dreamer in your midst. I think over in Contact Engine, Giles would be one of their big dreamers as well. And there's some other dreamers on their team as well. So that would be a logical step. And then it'll be, you know, figuring out how you talk to the individuals that are running the different industries or the clients in the different industries to really pull together to say, here's some use cases that we've considered. Would these things work, right, for your client? And who can we talk to vet these things? Now, once you get the discussion, I'd say be honest about what you have and what you don't. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the use case built out, I think that's okay. But the best way to get in there is offer to build it for free, right? Invest, do the investment. And then when you work with companies like Accenture, we help you figure out how to recoup that investment on the back end. There's always a way to recoup.
Perfect. And Giles, from your perspective, being the startup, moving from vertical.
Yes, the vertical challenge is very. There's two challenges to it. There's there's so many different verticals that, you know, healthcare, insurance, retail. Which ones do you go for? That's one thing. And the other thing is, especially when you're working with a huge organization such as Accenture, every option is possible. But also, people are quite segmented into their industry sectors. You very often have people who just have a focus in a particular sector. And for them, and they almost operate as different business units, you know, and they operate quite differently. So actually getting that ability to go up and across is challenging. But Dana's, you know, you've managed to make that happen, which is terrific. And with regard to which sectors you go for, that was a real surprise for me. Coming from the UK, we've got, you know, UK, our strongest suits are in telco utility clients. So coming over here, I thought, well, we'll do telco, then we'll do utility. Mm-hmm. And then I discovered in the US that, you know, the UK has got a very robust competitive utility market. You can buy gas, electricity, water from any one of 10, 15 companies. And here I am in McLean, Virginia. I've got Dominion Power, Fairfax Water, Washington Gas. That's it. There's no choices to be made. So all of a sudden, the competitive elements that really drive organizations to improve their customer service in the utility space, they were gone. So that makes it that much harder in utility to really drive innovative customer experience solutions. I'm sure we'll do it, but for me, that took them off the front burner as a key target. And then I looked at the government and federal space, which is the UK. It's interesting. I mean, trying to work with the UK government is so painful as to be awful. But over here, you've got the states. And the states, I think, because there's 50 of them, obviously, they also have this kind of competitive edge against each other. They're always trying to kind of compete with each other. And furthermore, all the providers that actually do the work for the states, and indeed for federal, they absolutely want to drive efficiency. So most of the state and federal work is subcontracted. So Accenture are doing work for numerous states, for example. They are looking desperately and keenly and enthusiastically for efficiencies they can bring. So we've therefore chosen, really to focus on the public sector, the public services, and the federal market, because that's where, bizarrely for me, we can actually drive the fastest improvement in customer experience. So it's about those two things. It's about understanding how your partner works and how you go across industry. And secondly, which industries to choose first, because otherwise you could get lost going across everything.
I'd also say take advantage, and I'm going to say this and probably regret it as soon as I say it, but take advantage of your external, impacts. COVID was, on one end, it's horrible because of the human impact, but it provides a new advantage, in my opinion, for the startup. because startups have the ability to move really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a startup, you don't have all of the guardrails that the larger enterprise software companies have. So you can be agile, you can be nimble, and you can just get things stood up like that, right? Use that to your advantage, right? If you know that you have something that may be COVID relevant or relevant to anything that's going on at any given time, you know, like jump in and throw the proposals out there. You really have nothing to lose. And that could be an entrance into a new market.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Now, I know we've been speaking about all things good, and we know not all things are good. So I'd like to ask some questions about challenges. So we'll start with you, Dana. In terms of challenges you face when working with startups, can you describe those and some things that you would do to remediate those for the group?
I would say that probably the challenges that we have as corporations working with startups would probably be the exact reverse of the challenges that a startup would have working with a large corporation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a large corporation, we have a lot of rules, we have a lot of methodology, we have a lot of processes, and it's like you're a multi-billion corporation. Those are the things that allow you to get the things that you need to get done. Startups don't have any of that. So I would say our largest, frustration is why are these things not standard, right? Why? What do you mean it's not? You have no documentation? Like everyone has documentation. Okay, Dana, you worked at a startup before. You know they don't have documentation. It has not been that long. Get over yourself and focus on what can you do to support them in getting the documentation, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say it's some of the standard things. So the lack of documentation at times. Diminished staff, right? There's only a handful of employees, right? And then sometimes it's, who owns what and who has to be the final approver, right? If I'm working in someone in the US, I can assume that they can make decisions based on their role, when in reality, they may have to get approval from engineering that sits, in this case, in the UK. Mm-hmm. That was very, very difficult for me to really understand. So it was, lots of fussing and occasional cussing and why is this so hard? And, late night phone calls over glasses of wine or dinner with Giles. Giles, what can we do to fix this? Mm-hmm. And Giles having to really help me understand that I needed to be patient because they were working on it, but it would take time because there was a human factor to it that I could never understand because I'm in a large corporation where even though we have all types of bureaucracy, I can get around it by one escalating phone call and it's done, right?
Right.
So I think it's the understanding that small does create challenges that I won't understand. However, me exercising a certain level of patience and really acknowledging my role as a partner that's there to help them long term is key, right? So if we say we're going to partner with a startup, there's certain things that we have to take as what goes along with it, right? Because ultimately on the back end of it, if you're a part of helping them get it resolved, it's actually a good news story, right? Right. I mean, my goal personally is to take them to the point where they can be an enterprise customer or at least get bought by one, right? Right. That's the goal. But, I'm willing to, get in the trenches and deal with some of the bumps along the way, no matter how painful it is.
Perfect. Giles, from a startup's perspective, what are the challenges?
Yeah, it's funny. I was as Dave was talking, I was thinking, I remember when my wife and I dropped our first son off at school initially, first day at school. I mean, there was tears, there was tantrums, not from the kids, you understand, from me and my wife. I mean, especially my wife. It was like this, the letting go, and the saying, right, I'm handing this over to you it is quite, for people who've got a startup, who've built the organization, there's an emotional attachment that's very, very hard to deal with. So I think it was this time last year, Dana, you and I, we were talking about basically having some of your team Manila, your one team Manila, do some configuration and coding on Contact Engine. And you were like, well, I've got this team, they can do it. That's because teach them, we'll staff them up, teach them remotely, we'll staff them up. And it took us like 3 or 4 months to just get over the
It was
emotional.
more like 7. It was like 7 months actually, but that's fine. Never. Go ahead. Continue.
But it took us, to make that transition, and it wasn't a logical one. It wasn't even difficult. We did it. It was like, oh, that was easy. So driving away from the school afterwards, that was easy. But it was so emotional, and I think it's because also, as well as it being like your baby, you don't want to give it. You're worried about your IP. You're worried about your technical debt. You're worried about the ability to expose what you've got and basically be weighed and measured in accordance with that. But of course, the organization, the partners have already seen its great technology. They're aware it's not going to be perfect. They don't expect it to be shiny, push screen buttons. There's going to be bits of configuration that need a little bit of polish. And basically, I think for me, Dan, one of the big things you explained to me how in the early days of Siebel, you guys were kind of building it and configuring it and doing it. And I think Anson, Accenture there, and they had Siebel had a very, very close relationship and produced that amazing companies. They're working together. So I think it's that willingness to trust, willingness to let go, willingness to just say, okay, this is it. This is what we are. And then really to say, how are we going to make this all, keep on improving, keep on driving the improvement. So it's an emotional thing to let go. I think that's the nature of it. But you've got to do it. You've got to drop the kid off at school.
Yeah, I think at one point I've told Giles the story of one of my startups. I said, Giles, it can't possibly be that bad. I had one startup that I worked with where anytime you did a configuration, if it went south and it just stopped working, you couldn't just fix it. You had to get your laptop replaced. You had to get a new machine. The software is not nearly that complex, I promise you. And he goes, no, that won't happen. I'm like, then unleash the code. It's fine.
That's been tremendous. And now we've got, tens. We're probably heading for 50 people trained in Accenture in the space of 5 months who are actually doing the configuration of Contact Engine for your clients. And hurrah, we're scalable. That's just tremendous.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Speaking of a child and dropping your child off, how do you, and this is for Giles first, how do you choose your corporation that you want to partner with? I mean, because there's many of them out there. So how do you make that decision? Is there key criteria that you look at to make that decision?
Yes. Well, in terms of the organizations you work with, it has to be people. As I said, if their brand must be additive to your brand. So for us, Virgin Media, Sky, Verizon, when we came over here, they were all important key clients. Their brands, people will see we're working with them, and that gives us kudos. Quite aside from the contracts and the money and that kind of stuff. And with regard to partners, I'm just biased. I didn't make a choice. Well, I didn't make a choice. I just said I wanted to be Accenture. Maybe I could have done more research, but frankly, for me, there was never. If you look at the growth of Accenture over the last 20 years and where they've come from and what they're, Manderson Consulting in 91, 92 to where they are now, there's 500,000 people inside Accenture. They work with every major client we want to work with, and they do the sort of work that they're the leaders in customer experience, leaders in CRM, the leaders implementing all these tools. For me, that was just a no-brainer. They're the right organization to work with. I don't often say no-brainer but for me that was, and I guess for any market there might be an obvious choice, but for the markets we were looking at, telco, utility, financial services, public sector, federal, it was just Accenture.
Okay, perfect. And Dana, when Accenture looks at startups, is there criteria you guys go through when picking a startup?
Yeah, so we do have a group within Accenture called Accenture Ventures, and they do actively look and evaluate various startups. So all types of startups, all types of capabilities. It's a very, very complex organization. So I do know the kinds of things that they're looking for is what you're bringing to the table something that is relevant to the addressable market. What do the competitors look like? So what is ultimately your differentiator from other competitors in the market? Are the capabilities that you're bringing additive? Are they replacement capabilities? How can we, like, if we're, so like, let's take Contact Engine for an example. You know, Giles has mentioned companies like Salesforce, Oracle, et cetera. They all have, you know, conversational AI components. The MAGs, of course, are the leaders in NLU. So if I have to bring you to a client and they're bringing these larger competitors, do you have something where we can easily tell a story that says that what you bring to the table is actually not necessarily needs to be competitive, but it could be complementary, right? So could you use the startup to complement the larger stack with the, big name technologies and softwares, platforms? So we do look for softwares, or we do look for startups that have something unique that we could incorporate into ecosystems that we already sell, right? So it doesn't, and nothing has to be all or nothing, right? And we acknowledge that. And we do make it our point to, help our clients understand, right? That you don't have to have one product that does everything, because let's be honest, that's not real.
Right.
So we have a pretty extensive list of startups that we partner with. Giles is one of the fortunate few. I'll also piggyback on saying, like, when he says, how do you choose your partner? So in this case, an integrator. I think we as Accenture are honored to be the first, but to be honest and fair, we don't expect to be the last. Mm-hmm. We don't expect to be the only, but we do want to be the best, right? So that's why we are happy to be at the table first. And a part of that is when you choose your partners, it probably also makes sense that they do have a culture that acknowledges the importance of the startup and the importance of the entrepreneurship behind it, and that partner is willing to put some of their own investment into taking you to the next level, right? Because if they're going to be the first, they should be wanting to invest in your growth.
Right. Okay.
And that's how we also, when we look at our startups, we do that as well. So we say, are you just going to stay a limited partner? Are you going to grow to be the next level partner, ultimately with the goal of one day becoming an ecosystem partner,
right?
Which are the likes of like the Oracles, et cetera, of the world.
Right. Fantastic. And this brings me to my last question, or actually more of a statement. Giles, we'll start with you first. In terms of advice, because I know there's a lot of startups in this session, what advice would you give to them when they're looking at corporations? What kind of advice, is it their enablement? Is it their deck? I mean, what kind of advice would you give to these startups?
Right, that's yes, an interesting thing. So for me, my favorite quote, and the quote we've always used in our company, and I've just looked it up to make sure I get it right. It's one of the US presidents, Calvin Coolidge. Mm-hmm. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. A wonderful president. Also, interestingly, one of the few that didn't stand for a second term, which is a wonderful man during the 20s. And persistence is, for me, and perseverance are the most important things. You think you're down, you think it's hard, just push on, just see yourself through, and that's the most important characteristic.
And Dana, from your perspective, what do you think? What kind of advice would you give to a startup if they're coming to Accenture for the first time?
I actually am going to echo what Giles said. Be persistent. We get approached by a lot of companies, a lot of startups. But if you have a product that you believe in and you know that you can address something in the market, and you know that, let's be honest, we're all in it to make money. If you know that it's something that could help us, make additional money with our clients and can also bring you into client spaces where you don't exist today, be willing to be persistent. And if you find someone who isn't necessarily the right person, a lot of times, read those tea leaves that you're not talking to the right person. Ask for a referral to someone else, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Do your research as well, right? If you have, access to the corporate websites, go and see if they, work with startups. Go see if they have investment arms within the company and figure out how you can make connections with those groups. Absolutely. Because you have nothing to lose by doing that. Nothing at all. Everything to gain.
Right. Absolutely. Good point. So I'm at the end of my questions. So I'd like to open up the floor. If there's anything that I didn't hit on that you guys would like to add, please go ahead. And Giles, we'll start with you.
Questions from me or questions from the floor we're looking for?
I don't think we have any questions from the floor.
I think we covered things very well. I think also I do want to emphasize that the importance of trust, transparency, openness, honesty, just making sure that you can rely on each other. And that also, of course, means frequent dialogue, communication, dialogue. Dana and I, we speak all the time. I've been away from my phone, I think, for 3 days in the last 2 years. I went to the Smokies for my 50th birthday, but otherwise, I suspect that we have been in touch every week, and just keep that dialogue open. Don't be afraid of problems happening. They'll happen, and you'll fix them. It's absolutely fine. But just that openness and trust is very important in a corporate partner relationship. And we do tens of millions of customer journeys. We had one customer journey that went wrong for one of our clients, literally for one customer. And I said straight to the VP, I said, this customer journey has gone wrong. He said, thank you so much for telling me. I appreciate you fixed it. I love this partnership. I love the fact that the person that's told me about this problem is you, not someone through our customer care center or someone else. So if you see something that's gone wrong, find it, fix it, deal with it. That's the right way to approach things.
Okay, perfect. Dana, anything to add to the startups on this session?
So I would say, and to kind of piggyback on what Giles said, and then I'm going to address something that I see in the chat from Manoj. So one, I think, once you get to a point where I know building trust takes time, right? And once you get to the point where you feel like you've been able to build some level of trust, don't be afraid of the warts and be comfortable enough to have the unfiltered conversation around where you might need help as a startup, to address some of the things internal that you may feel are blocking your ability to make it to the next level or to get past where you are right now. Because 9 times out of 10, your partner has seen those kinds of things before, and they can give you some really good counsel and advice on how to work through some things, or even give you, hardcore solutions by way of resources to help you address it. So don't be shy. Now, I will be the first to say, you have to make sure that you have a good trust-based relationship with your partner, so that it's not going to be something that they're going to hold over your head later and things like that. So I get that that's not something that everyone's going to be comfortable doing day one. But, once you've been in the trenches together, I think it becomes very evident that there are things that you can definitely help, get past. So Manoj, you had a point that said you never managed to sell to an enterprise before, but got very close with Barclays. I would say leverage partners to help you break the enterprise, right? Because they may already have that relationship. So as a startup, you might not be able to get in on your own, but if you can build a relationship with a partner that's already there, definitely try to leverage something like that where possible. And yep.
I've got a thought on that as well. Selling to financial services initially is really difficult. We tried some of that early on. They're much, much more difficult to sell into than some other organizations. And in this context, I particularly talk about telcos, cable companies. They're right at the forefront of innovation. And I do find that they're much more open as organizations to innovation, innovative technologies, especially as there's massive competition between all of them globally. And if you want, contact me afterwards, and I'll see what your software is. and we'll see if there's a place with the contacts we know in various telcos. If we can plug you in, happy to help.
Yeah, our goal this year is to break into financial services. So that is something that we are actively focused on with Giles this year. And the way we're going to do it, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there now, is that we're going to leverage capabilities that we have at some specific targeted financial institutions, and then bring Contact Engine as a complementary service on top of what we already deliver. So that'll be the key. Yeah. I also see something in there regarding corporate partnerships for profit share conversations. So this one I'm going to let Giles talk about, because I've been constantly trying to force them down the path of, let's look at something outcome-based, value-based. I understand in the startup culture, it's very, very difficult. I am always game, because I know that you can make tremendous money doing, some what we would call fees at risk, but in a startup world, that's very, very, very dangerous. So Giles, I'm going to let you talk to that topic.
I very much look forward to the day when we can put all our fees at risk and just do profit share deals. That will be a tremendous day. But obviously, as a startup, you've got costs you've got to protect. Unless you've got a huge amount of funding, it can be very challenging. My suggestion is, for any deal you're doing, and even some of our early ones we've done, at least put some of the fees at risk. It shows you've got skin in the game. It shows you're working to a common kind of agenda with your client, with your partner. You may not be able to put as much at risk as others might like, but that will grow over time. But I think having something at risk that is based upon achieving KPIs, I think that's a really bonding thing. There's, interestingly, some of the times when we propose that, after the pilot, procurement have backed down from it, because they're like, oh, actually, you could make way too much money here. So they actually back down from the profit sharing. So sometimes it's a kind of game of call my bluff. You can propose it knowing that procurement, they get kind of scared sometimes by gain share opportunities. So they can then back down from them. But at least you've made the offer.
Okay. I don't see any more questions.
So I did want to see if someone wanted to speak live, because Justin, you actually threw in something about you guys focused on sustainable apparel and have partnered with Comcast. And I think that's really, really cool. And I said, hey, did you guys target their technicians? And you said you made inroads through their marketing and HR leaders. That's really cool, because I was going to say, if you targeted the technician population because they all have standard uniforms and things like that, Cox is somewhere I think you should target next. They're very, very keen on anything that's focused on the environment. It is a part of their underlying culture. So, and they actually have a very good relationship with Comcast. So you could leverage your relationship with Comcast to break into Cox Communications, another cable co, as well as Rogers in Canada, because they all work together. There's no competition amongst those companies, so they do share ideas.
Okay, perfect. No, Giles, I think we only have like a couple of minutes left. Actually, we're out of time. We're at the top of the hour. We are at the top of the hour. So I'd like to thank both Giles and Dana for joining us today. I hope that this was a good use of everyone's time and you were able to take away some things to help you on your journey to success.
Thank you, Aline, for hosting us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. It's been great.